The Japanese island of Aogashima, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, is one of the most remote volcanic islands on Earth.
The helicopter is really the umbilical cord for the people who live here.
Despite their extreme isolation, the few men and women who live here are viscerally attached to this volcanic nugget and its many treasures.
We were born on this isolated volcano. I'm really happy to live here.
The people of Aogashima have a filial love for this faraway island.
We too must entrust this island and its heritage to the future generations.
For more than 15 years, I've been traveling to active volcanoes around the globe to meet the people who live closest to them. Sharing their daily life gives us a better understanding of the living history of the Earth and its inhabitants. Located south of Tokyo is the Itsu archipelago, consisting of 100 or so volcanic islands. Aogashima, located 350 kilometers from the Japanese capital, is the most remote inhabited island of the archipelago. All departures for Aogashima are made from the nearby island of Hachijojima. The only means of transportation available are the helicopter and the boat.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I think today's the day. I'm finally going to take off for the remote island of Aogashima. The last time I came here, it was at the end of a typhoon. The wind was still raging and neither the helicopter nor the boat could leave. I'm finally going to be able to live my dream.
During the typhoon season, the inhabitants of Aogashima are sometimes cut off from the world for several weeks.
Hello.
I'm about to board a helicopter to cross the last 75 kilometers that separate me from the most isolated and least populated island of the Japanese archipelago. Aogashima Island is so remote that very few Japanese venture there. I finally discovered this volcano that seems to rise up out of the sea. It's on its flanks and inside its crater that the inhabitants have settled. Having pride of place at its center is a small volcanic cone formed from the last eruption.
The helicopter is really the umbilical cord for the people who live here. Everyone awaits the helicopter and its deliveries. It's really one of these end-of-the-earth places that count in a traveler's life.
The helicopter and the boat only come to the island twice a day. The port and heliport are places where the people meet up and pick up supplies. The 160 inhabitants of the island eagerly await these back-and-forth trips. Measuring just 6.2 kilometers, Aogashima Island is one of the least populated places in Japan, and yet officially, it's a district of Tokyo. Here, the atmosphere of calm is striking. Everything exudes peace and tranquility. Yet barely 300 years ago, the volcano woke up and wreaked havoc. If I look carefully around me, I can still see visible traces of this disaster.
What's really moving to see here is these graves all over the island, which testify to the great eruption of the 18th century, where 2/3 of the population who couldn't be evacuated lost their lives. There was only one boat to evacuate the people, so you can imagine the heartbreak of leaving loved ones behind on this erupting island. It must have been absolutely terrifying. We can see these graves everywhere in the village, throughout the landscape, with the island of Aogashima in the distance, where the third of the population that was able to leave found refuge.
Akira Takada is a volcanologist. He doesn't live on Aogashima Island, but he's been working here since the start of his scientific career. He's responsible for making the first geological map of the island.
It's well worth the climb to stand at the edge of this crater. What a landscape. The past inhabitants must have been extremely isolated here.
According to the historic documents, during the Edo period, the inhabitants of this island were independent from the shogunate in Tokyo and didn't pay taxes to the shogun. They were independent and lived here in a kind of utopian world. The people ate what they caught in the sea and were totally self-sufficient.
Professor, when you started your work here, were you a sort of pioneer in volcanology?
I was the second volcanologist to come here. I started to date the volcanic eruptions and do extensive analyses of the soils in order to compare them and date the different eruptions. That's how I made the first geological map of Aogashima.
Here, we're at the summit of a huge submarine volcano.
This island looks small, but in reality, the volcano extends under the sea for about 30 kilometers. What we see here is just the summit that emerges from it.
One of the particularities of Aogashima can be found in the center of the main crater. After a long walk through the tropical vegetation, we finally reached the top of the volcanic cone that appeared in the landscape just 300 years ago.
Professor, we're here on the edge of the crater from the last eruption that took place in Aogashima. When did this happen exactly?
The last eruptions of this caldera took place between 1781 and 1785. And it was these eruptions that formed the central cone that's called Maruyama. Before these violent eruptions, this caldera was flat inside.
During the last eruption, there were many people living on the island. What happened to this local population?
When the eruptions began, the inhabitants were taken by surprise but didn't flee. From 1780, the eruptions became more and more violent. In 1781 and then in 1783. Some people were able to escape, but the rescue boat on Hachichojima Island wasn't big enough to hold everyone. As a result, only 1/3 of the population was able to be evacuated. All the others died on the island.
Despite this tragedy and the danger posed by the volcano, barely 50 years later, Aogashima was repopulated. It's in the volcano's subsoil that the reason for the inhabitants' visceral attachment to their island can be found. In the very heart of the caldera, fumaroles escape from the ground just about everywhere. In the local dialect, they're called hingya. They testify to an intense subterranean activity which is at the origin of Aogashima's treasure, geothermal energy.
96, 97, 98 degrees centigrade. We have all the gases coming out. These gases are actually fluids, mainly seawater that seeps into the island and comes out as steam. It's mainly steam. There are very few sulfuric and chlorinated gases here, and you can see the steam coming out everywhere at a temperature of around 90 to 100 degrees centigrade. It really feels as though the Earth is breathing. You can really feel the heart of the Aogashima volcano beating. You have to imagine that a few tens of centimeters underneath here, there are pockets of extremely hot steam, much hotter than at the surface. From time to time, steam explosions can take place in areas where the gases are under pressure.
Geothermal energy is at the center of the Aogashima Islanders' life. The subterranean breath of the volcan warms the ground, ensuring abundant agricultural production all year round. Tadeishi Kikuchi was born on the island. Like all the farmers of Aogashima, he benefits from the exceptional fertility of this volcanic island.
Tadeishi, what are we picking here?
These are sweet potatoes for cooking, not for making alcohol. This variety of purple sweet potato is called beniharuka. It's delicious. I'm sorting the big ones, the small ones, and the ones for the chickens. These ones are for me.
Is this a traditional crop here on Aogashima?
Here there are no rice fields because there's no water, so historically people couldn't eat rice. Sweet potato has always been the staple food in my house since I was a child.
Why is there no water here?
The water's absorbed. There are no lakes either. So we have to make stocks of drinking water. Unlike islands where the water comes out of the ground, here it's absorbed into the volcano.
The volcano also gives you this soil, which is an exceptional soil for farming.
Thanks to the volcano, the fields are always warm, even in winter. We can grow all kinds of vegetables. Here we don't need a greenhouse or a heating system. We use nature, the volcano. The volcano isn't dangerous at all, on the contrary. I'm grateful to it. There's no danger, no toxic gases, as long as it doesn't erupt. Can you see the steam over there?
Are those the fumaroles coming directly out of the volcano?
Yes, and it's thanks to this activity that we can have such a wide variety of crops on this island. Touch the earth, feel how hot it is.
Yeah, it's hot. It's really hot.
If you dig deeper down, it's so hot that you can get burned. That's why the vegetation doesn't die, even in winter when it snows. These sweet potatoes have been here for 100 years or so, and nobody planted them.
This island's geothermal energy isn't only used to grow crops. It's also used to cook them. Picnic areas have been set up all over the island. People can come and cook their food with the steam from the volcano. The inhabitants also use this natural energy to heat their water, homes, and traditional baths.
Is that for volcano cooking? We put the sweet potatoes in here. Okay, we cover it. And we just open the valve here.
That's the steam coming up.
It's magic.
It's very hot, be careful.
Okay. In fact, here, the sweet potatoes return to their volcanic origin in a way. They're cooked directly by the heat of the volcano that gave them life. It's almost a virtuous circle. Do you often come to cook here?
Yes, since I was a small boy, using the heat of the hingya steam. We can't do without it. Today we have electricity, but we need to think about global warming and the energy shortage. We need to find solutions. A geothermal power station, for example.
Listening to you, I get the impression that thanks to the volcano, you live in harmony with nature here.
We were born on this isolated volcano, and we've always made use of its heat. I'm really happy to live here. I admire and respect our Aogashima ancestors for their way of life. Yes, let's open it now. They look delicious.
It almost tastes like a pastry. It's excellent. Enjoy your meal.
Yeah, you too.
The steam produced by the volcano is one of the particularities of Aogashima. It has enabled the inhabitants to live for centuries on this nourishing land. Over time, these islanders have learned how to use to their advantage all the opportunities offered by geothermal energy. The most original use is undoubtedly the production of an exceptional salt, unique in the world.
Konnichiwa. Aogashima Island. What is it?
It's yokan. It's a sweet red bean paste. It has hinya salt in it.
That's the salt produced in the crater.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to try it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Here's your change from 1,000 yen.
Is this the only grocery store in the village?
Yes, we're the only one.
And it's not too hard living isolated here?
It's hard, yes, but it's essential to have a place like this for the life of the inhabitants.
When there are storms or typhoons, do you ever remain isolated for a long period of time?
Yes, for the drinks, we keep a large stock of them in a storeroom. For perishable goods, it's more of a problem when the boat's unable to make deliveries. But it's not a problem for vegetables because almost everyone grows them here.
As night still covers Aogashima, I set out to discover the famous Hingya salt, the other treasure of this tiny island full of mysteries and surprises. And it's a woman alone who's responsible for its production.
I have an appointment with Arissa, who's backing up her truck on the harbor dike to pump water from the Pacific Ocean. And all this to make a salt that's unique in the world, this geothermal salt. She'll use the energy from the volcano to evaporate the seawater. Arissa, it's 4 a.m. Why do you come out so early to get the seawater?
It's so as not to disturb the fishermen. I generally come here once a week or every 10 days.
Arissa, we're right in the center of a typhoon zone here. I imagine there are days when you can't come here at all.
That's right. It's not easy. It's very hard. We have typhoons from May to November. It often happens that we can't get close to the sea.
Arissa is the only person in the world to use geothermal energy to produce salt. The high-temperature volcanic steam allows for faster crystallization than in traditional salt marshes. This is why the marine trace elements remain concentrated in the salt.
Look, today's salt is starting to crystallize.
It's this morning's water?
Yes, it's the first day.
How long does the production process take?
Crystallization takes about 16 days. Each tank is connected to this pipe and receives steam from the volcano. It's very hot.
This indoor geothermal production offers the guarantee of constant water evaporation. It's never slowed down by the vagaries of weather, as is often the case in salt marshes.
We scrape it once a day.
Wow.
And we let it heat up until all the water has evaporated.
Wow, the crystals are beautiful. This is really a gift to you from the volcanoes.
Exactly. It's a gift from the earth. It's a blessing. I've seen something. We have to remove that as well.
Arissa, why do you give quasi-surgical attention to each grain of salt?
Our salt is the result of a natural process, so it's normal to find some impurities. But our goal is to produce a perfect salt. Our customers are looking for a salt of impeccable quality. That's why it has to be perfect, and I work hard to make it so. It's hot, isn't it?
What a work environment.
Would you like to drink something?
With pleasure. Okay. Now that's a glass. You seem to have an almost personal relationship with the volcano.
I'm divorced, and I raise my daughter alone. But when my daughter left home, I realized that I spent all my days here with the Hilya vapors as my only company. So I can say that I consider them my family. Do you want to taste it?
Okay. It's a very mild salt. It has an almost sweet aftertaste to it.
Yes, it sweetens the taste of the food when mixed with rice or tomatoes, for example.
According to the legend, the first man to return to the island 50 years after the terrible eruption informed the other islanders that Aogashima was habitable again by beating his drum. Satoshi Arai continues this tradition today by transmitting this art to the children of the island. Satoshi was born and raised on Aogashima. Like all the children of the island, he had to leave at the age of 15 to go to secondary school. After his studies and his marriage, he chose to come back to live here.
Kanju taiko drums are particularly important for the people of Aogashima. Everything was burned during the eruption of 1785. The inhabitants moved to Hachichojima Island. But it was a time when land was more valuable than money. Because it was the land that provided food for sustenance. So the people came back 50 years later and started all over again. We continue this musical tradition to honor our ancestors who came back and fought to give us the life we have today. We too must leave this island and its heritage to the future generations. It's the island's dance and drums that maintain this connection to the past. Our specialty is to twirl our drumsticks like this when we play. It represents the eruptions of the volcano.
So it's a volcanic drum, in fact.
Volcanoes often reveal the best in people, their courage, their determination, their loyalty, their resourcefulness. Here on Aogashima, lost in the Pacific Ocean, a handful of people rely solely on themselves and the benefits their volcano offers them. Despite the storms, the seclusion, and the risks of volcanic eruption, these diehards wouldn't leave their tiny piece of land for anything in the world. They're the guardians of this fabulous, faraway volcanic island.